Yo, how is it going, Bears fans? Welcome back to another episode of the Bear Down Podcast, where we talk everything Bears every day of the week. I am your host, Chris Malpe, and I am joined with my co-host, Parth today.
What's up, Chris?
And I am also joined with my editor, Zach Rimbo. Zach, what's going on?
What's up, everybody?
So it is currently April 17th, and it has been one of the most stressful days of the offseason for Bears fans. They announced 5 new transactions. The one we are here to talk about today is the release of Trey Burton. So let's just hop right into it. This is going to be a mini podcast. You'll see this on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and obviously the YouTube channel. It's going to be a shorter one, just getting our thoughts out on Trey Burton and then possibly some tight ends in the NFL draft. So Parth, I'm going to start with you. The news broke at about 4 p.m. this afternoon that Burton was cut. What was your initial reaction to that after recording, obviously, our whole tight end special earlier this week?
I was super confused, not gonna lie. I was hoping for Trey Burton to be on the team, actually. I thought him and Jimmy could make a great tight end combination for the team. But Ryan Pace thought different. I guess we don't know something about Trey Burton's health still and mental health. So that factored into probably Pace's decision. It'll be interesting to see what the Bears do with tight end 2 now.
Absolutely. Zach, what was your reaction when this move went down earlier this afternoon?
Honestly, like Parth, I was a little surprised, but I also think I was kind of excited at first. I really think, not to be in a poor manner, but what I'm saying is he underproduced last season. He was on IR. He only played 8 games. He sat out of the Bears playoff game, which is notably one of the biggest games of recent Bears history. So at first I was thinking, I like it. Now we know for sure that we're probably going to go for a tight end in this draft and that Jimmy Graham is probably going to be the number 1 here. But it just seems interesting because now it seems like we paid Jimmy Graham so much and it almost seems like this was Pace's decision, owning up to his mistake and paying Jimmy Graham that much just to release Trey Burton is interesting to me.
Absolutely. And if you look at this deal more, Adam Johns of The Atlantic reported that's going to be a post-June 1 cut. Obviously, there's some dead money involved with that, but the Bears cap space will go from just under 1.1 mil to 2.8 mil now, following some other signings that they made today. So that's very interesting. I think when I saw this, honestly, I wasn't too surprised. I voiced my comments on Trey Burton earlier this week in the podcast. I said I thought they may try to move him in the draft. I don't think I saw a cut coming, but that being said, I said it wouldn't shock me if they moved on from him in some way, shape, or form. So this doesn't really shock me. So let's get into the next question. Obviously now Burton is gone. We'll see what ends up happening with him. Jimmy Graham's the number 1 guy in Chicago. There are still 9 tight ends on the roster. I would assume most of them do not make it through training camp. Parth and I talked about it earlier this week. We both said somewhere between 4 and 6 guys will make it. Obviously, Trey Burton now not being one of them, so that maybe brings it down to 4 or 5 guys even. Do you think the Bears draft a tight end? Don't name names yet. Parth, do you think they draft a tight end?
Yeah, we have to. That's all I'm going to say.
Okay. Zach, do you think they draft a tight end?
Yeah, absolutely. You got J.P. Holtz and you got Jimmy Graham, so you got to get 3rd, I think, and then the rest of them we'll figure out with the roster.
Yeah, absolutely. You look at what we've got right now. Demetrius Harris, J.P. Holtz. I don't know if Horsted's still on the roster or not, and obviously Jimmy Graham. This is a perfect opportunity for the Bears to, bring in someone that can learn under Jimmy Graham. As productive or as unproductive as Jimmy Graham's going to be in Chicago in 2020, all of us can agree in saying that he's got great experience. He's going to be a great leader and a great guy to help groom a young tight end into someone who can be special in the future. I think there's no doubt about that, right, guys?
Oh, yeah, for sure. Jimmy Graham was one of the best tight ends in the league a couple years
Absolutely.
back. So.
One of the better tight ends of the last decade. He's gonna be a great teacher for whoever ends up in Chicago next. And yes, I do think the Bears do take a tight end now, and I think they take him early. So now let's move into talking about that. Before naming specific names, and it's going to be a little bit hard to before we do this. Obviously, the Bears have picked 43 and 50 in the upcoming draft now. Do you guys think it's appropriate to take a tight end at 43 or 50? Or do you think it's appropriate to trade back a little bit, maybe trade the 50th pick to move a little bit further back in the second round, and maybe acquire a third, fourth, fifth round pick where it's looking very nice this year? Do you think it's worth it taking a tight end early with one of those second round picks, or possibly moving back to take maybe a tight end who isn't as great, or risking it and maybe earning more picks? What do you guys think? Do you think that they should stay where they are or move back a little bit before choosing their tight end? Parth, I'm going to start with you.
I was thinking about moving back to the third round, so like maybe you can grab an extra third and a fourth by just trading your second rounder. That also helps us add more pieces to the team and get our tight end and not reach for a tight end, because I think maybe Cole Kmet, I'm not trying to name, but like I think he'll be gone before 43, so we'll have to choose from the rest. And I don't think the rest are second rounders in my opinion.
Yeah, I don't know where Kmet's going to go. I mean, there's a lot of guys that could slip this year. Ian Rappaport even tweeted out today that a GM told him that so many mock drafts and draft boards are absurdly wrong this year, more than they've seen in recent years. So as far as trading back or staying where we are goes, I think the right answer here, and it's going to be my answer, is I don't know. I think we really have to wait and see how it plays out on draft night. Long story short now, and luckily for you guys, the recording for Mock Draft 3.0 didn't work. That's going to go up next Tuesday. So we're going to re-record that, and it'll be more realistic now because some of us will probably take tight ends earlier. But I'm going to say I would like the Bears to wait and see how the board falls. I think drafting a tight end at 43 or 50 is fine if it's the guy you want. I think you also still want to focus on the offensive line. I also think trading back's a good option if we can get someone that we still want, and you can get more picks to still pick a solid, member of the secondary and offensive lineman. So as far as answering that question goes, I'm going to say I don't know. I think both options are intriguing. It really just depends on how the board plays out. Zach, I'm going to go to you next. Do you think they should trade down, or are you fine with the Bears drafting a tight end at 43 or 50?
You pretty much stated it. It kind of just depends on how everything falls, honestly. When we did our mock draft 3.0, which didn't originally work, I saw Green Bay picking Cole Kmet at 30, which is crazy. And I did that multiple times, and it kept happening. So, it really just depends on what's going to happen here. I really like the idea of us getting a tight end early just because that's where the talent's going to be. But, again, like you were saying, if we trade down and we get the picks that are in the later rounds, we get more depth additions to the team. That's very important. And if we get somebody who, for example, at the cornerback or safety positions, even in the later rounds that have that talent there, and develop them into the players that they need to be, then I'd be perfectly fine with that.
Absolutely. I mean, Jimmy Graham's obviously going to be the number one guy no matter what. So I agree with you. And the interesting thing about those mock drafts that we've been doing is there's been players that have fallen. There's been players that have been taken earlier than some of us think they should be. And it seems like that's how the draft's going to end up going. It's going to be a mixture of some good talent falling and some players possibly taken early. Because as I said earlier, the board seems to not be replicating what the teams are actually thinking. So we really have no clue what's going to happen on draft night. And I honestly think it's a good idea. I'm going to agree with Zach that the Bears wait, see how it plays out. I think we all have in mind two guys that we want the Bears to go for. So let's get into some specific names right now. We're each going to name a tight end that we want the Bears to draft. I'm going to go first, and I would like to advise you guys, Zach and Parth, look up the tight end stats who you want the Bears to pick, just so we can talk about how they performed a little bit last year, since this is now coming to the forefront. But I'm going to start with Brycen Hopkins. Purdue Boilermakers, he has met with the Bears more than anyone. We met with him, I believe, at the NFL Combine, also a virtual meeting, and possibly even at the Senior Bowl. So 2 or 3 meetings with Brycen Hopkins out of Purdue. He had a really good year during his senior season at Purdue. 61 catches, 830 yards for 7 touchdowns, averaging 13.6 yards per catch. Absolutely incredible as far as that goes. Obviously, the NFL's a different game, but getting 10-plus yards per catch is ridiculous. Looking at his other years, 34 catches in 2018, 25 in 2017. You can see that he's really progressed. He only had, it looks like, 9 touchdowns throughout his first 3 years and 7 in his last year. So a budding option that I think could really continue to bring his game to the next level in Chicago. Obviously, we know that we have Clancy Barone in Chicago who developed Jimmy Graham. This could be a very similar situation if the Bears bring in Brycen Hopkins. So that's the name I'm going to name. That's probably the guy I want. I'm pretty sure one of you guys are going to name the certain Notre Dame tight end with your guys' picks for who they should bring in. But I'm fine with either Bryson Hopkins or someone that is going to be mentioned very soon in the future. And for that reason, I'm going to hand it over to Zach. Zach, who is someone you think that could be available for the Bears early on in the NFL draft?
Yeah, you predicted it. So I was going to talk about Cole Kmet, and that's because he's also a hometown boy. He's from Lake Barrington, Illinois, so he's pretty close to home. He had 43 receptions for 515 yards, 6 touchdowns. He averaged 12 yards per reception. So, I mean, obviously that's really good.
Yeah.
Also, being at Notre Dame, the high-quality school that it is, the opponents they face, that talent and that competitiveness is there in Cole Kmet, and I really like that. But we've also talked about earlier today, we've seen that the Bears have also talked and met with Adam Trautman.
Yeah, they met with him at the Senior Bowl.
Out of Dayton, yeah, right. And he's got 70 receptions, 916 yards, 14 touchdowns, and 13 average yards per reception. And I really like that. Obviously, that's great numbers there.
Yeah. I mean, the only thing that worries me about that one is just the level of schools that Dayton faces,
right? It's Dayton
versus the level of schools that Purdue and Notre Dame are facing.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's all. I mean, it all obviously just depends on what we see in terms of out of the combine. I haven't seen Adam Trautman's combine numbers. So
if you compare one thing about Kmet, if you compare Kmet's combine stats to Rob Gronkowski's, they're literally close to identical. I said it earlier in the other episode. I hate saying Baby Gronk because Adam Shaheen was dubbed Baby Gronk. But if you look at the stats, they're side by side. They're very similar. Same with the production in college. So Zach noted Cole Kmet is a very interesting option, as well as Adam Trautman, someone who we could look to trade down for maybe if we try to recoup some more picks in the later rounds, could be available in the third round. And even Bryson Hopkins in a couple of my mock draft simulations slipped late second round to early third round. But he's also someone I could see being taken earlier. We spoke about it earlier. It all depends on how the board falls. Another interesting option down the board, I don't think they're going to take someone this late, is Dalton Keene out of Virginia Tech. But Parth, I'm sure you're going to discuss a guy that we've already talked about, but who do you like for the Bears picking if they do go with someone early on?
I was going to say Trautman. He's intriguing. He's 6'5", 255. He's big for his size. He did play small schools, but his production in college was there.
Yeah.
He's an intriguing prospect, and I feel like if we can get him in the third round, I'm in love with that trade back options so we can add more players to this team. At the end of the day, I don't mind who we get from these three, but Trautman, in my opinion, would be the best option.
You know who we all just didn't mention, and I'm completely shocked that we didn't mention him? Thaddeus Moss.
Yeah.
Yep.
He's overrated.
I mean, yeah, but if you think about it from a Bears perspective, he's been studying film since he was young. He's a champion. He just won a title at LSU. He did very good there. I'm going to quickly pull up his stats. But you think about it, I mean, he's coming from a long line of good football players. And by long line, I mean his father, who is absolutely incredible. So quickly pulling up Thaddeus Moss's stats here before we close this one off. At LSU last year, his sophomore year, 47 receptions, 570 yards, 4 touchdowns, 12 yards average catch. A good player. I mean, someone who's definitely going to be there in the third round if the Bears want to trade back. I'd be perfectly fine with, if I had to rank my options, I would probably go Hopkins and Kmet tied for first. I would literally take either. You could flip a coin. And then Thaddeus Moss and then Adam Trautman, I would probably say, because Thaddeus Moss also has that height that you were talking about on Trautman, and LSU plays a little bit of better teams, and he's obviously a champion too. But that's pretty much going to do it for this one, guys. We reacted to the Trey Burton transaction earlier when he was cut. We talked about the draft just a little bit and gave some options for who we think the Bears can take in this year's draft. If you'd like to follow our fan pages, they are all down in the description. Zach has a new page, Bears Complex. Be sure to check that one out. You can also follow the podcast on Instagram and Twitter at BearDown. And absolutely be sure to check out BearDown.com, our website next week and this weekend. Tons of draft content, especially with this tight end shakeup now. We're going to be pushing out a ton of stuff on there, so please be sure to check it out. Any last words, guys?
At least we got rid of Trey Burton.
It's going to be a long week, but I'm very excited to see what we're going to do here.
Yeah, we've got a lot of exciting interviews next week, a lot of brand new questions now that we can ask all these draft analysts, and it's going to be a very good one. So thank you guys for tuning in, and as always, Chicago, stay safe and bear down. Peace.